Welcome to Story Chats at Inspi Romance. I'm Elizabeth Madry, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
I'm Valerie Comer.
Today we are talking about CCR that is set in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. So, yeah. Anybody have anything to say about Illinois, Wisconsin, or Minnesota?
It can be hard to find. It can be. Illinois was the easiest place to find books.
Yeah.
I had choices for all of them.
Did you? You're so good.
I know. Oh, pardon me. Wait.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying so. Is that better? No.
I will say just all I could think of was just how they say their state names when you're from there. That's what was stuck in my head, because they say Wisconsin, because it's very nasal, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. They're more Canadian in Minnesota. It's just how they say it, Minnesota.
Is that more Canadian? I have no idea.
I'm still biting my tongue there.
Tell me you're sorry, Valerie.
The story, I grew up in Manitoba, which is right next door to Minnesota, or however you want to say it. And so I'm old. This is probably in the late 60s. Probably, yeah, 9 or 10 years old. And we were down in the States driving, and we were at a gas station, and the guy looked at, back in the days of full serve, right? The guy looked at our license plate and he goes, Manitoba. What state is that in?
Oh,
we're right next door in Canada.
Oh my goodness, that's funny.
So that's
because generally speaking, Americans are like, Canada. It's there.
Yeah,
there,
he
across the top.
that they were almost like Canadians. Anyways, that guy.
Very good. That's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day. I don't remember who, but they were talking about how Canada was so close, and so they were looking forward to going to Vancouver, because it surely they could drive to Vancouver from here. And I'm like, well, you can, but it's probably 30 hours because it's way over there.
Seattle and north.
Yeah. So, anyway. All right. So back to books. Back to
Minnesota.
Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. I'm gonna go first because I don't want anybody to steal my first one.
That's fine. I have choices for all of them.
Well, exactly. Since you're bragging about your choices, I'm gonna go first. And I am choosing Dear Mr. Knightley by Katherine Reay. It is set in Chicago, which I adore. I love Chicago. It is an epistolary novel, which I also adore.
I can't say that word.
Well, I don't know that I'm saying it right, but I'm saying it the way I say it. So letter-based. It is older at this point now, which is sad to say because it makes me feel old. But it is about Sam, who is a bookish orphan girl, Sam being a fairly generic name, so Samantha, I assume. And she gets a scholarship to Northwestern University, but as part of the scholarship, she has to correspond with the anonymous benefactor of said scholarship via letter. And so, so she agrees to sort of hesitantly. She doesn't like the stipulations. She is a street smart foster kid and just sees strings as ways for people to take advantage of you. And she also at the same time meets a novelist, Alex, and she and Alex begin to develop feelings for one another. They keep bumping into each other. They start to run together, these sorts of things. It's set in Chicago. Chicago is absolutely part of the story. It would be a slightly different book if it were in a different city. It would be a hugely different book if it was in a small town. It had to be Chicago, I think. And I don't know if it's a spoiler alert, probably a little bit of a spoiler alert, but it's not a love triangle. I'll just phrase it that way. But it is just delightful, and it's one I reread periodically, not necessarily every year, but it's rereadable, which to me is the stamp of a fantastic book. So that's my first one.
I haven't read that book. It's been in my TBR for years, but my TBR is always out of control, but it's never actually hit the top. So maybe I should go and actually read this book.
It's fantastic. I will say I hesitated about reading it for quite a while because it was one that everybody gushed over when it came out, and I'm very contrary. And so then I'm like, oh, well, if everybody's gushing over it, I'm not going to read it because it can't be that good. It is. Sorry. It is. It's worth reading.
Narelle, do you have an Illinois book?
I have a couple.
Oh,
pick one.
Yes.
Pick one.
All right, I'll pick one. I'm going to go with Avie Tyler's Day Off by Betsy Amant, which is in the 80s Rom-Com Club, which is an anthology collection I've mentioned before with Teresa Tysinger, J.C. Weaver, Mikkel Dawn, Jennifer Rodewald, and Belle Renshaw. And they're set all over the country, so don't go looking at this book thinking they're all in Chicago. But Avie Tyler's Day Off is based on it's not based on, but it's loosely connected to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is an 80s movie that I just thought was hilarious. And I love the way that she integrated the key elements of Ferris Bueller's Day Off into the story. And basically she plays hooky for a day from work. It's her 30th birthday and she's with her best friend's brother, Colin. And they spend the day in Chicago completing her 30 by 30 bucket list. And I talked about it in episode 79, Recent Reads. So if you want to know more about the story, go listen to episode 79. But I think this one came to me first because it really showcased Chicago. They did a whole lot of touristy, fun things in Chicago that made me think, I wish I'd been in Chicago for more than about 24 hours, which is the length of time I've been in Chicago when I was transiting to go to an ACFW conference. So I would love to go back to Chicago and do all the things that they did in this book and in all these other books I've read about amazing Chicago stuff. So that's just a fun one. They drive around the city in a cute red convertible, and that just sounds really cool to me.
Very fun. Love it.
I had forgotten that one took place in Chicago, but I did enjoy that story too. Oh, you guys, and I have both. You didn't pick either of mine.
Excellent.
How can I? Now I have to choose. Let's go with Dear Henry, Love Edith, which we did. We interviewed Becca Kinzer.
In January.
Relatively recently, last year sometime.
That was my other one, by the way.
It was this past January. It's on my list too.
It was my number 2.
Yeah.
So it is a romantic comedy about mistaken identity, second chances, and finding love in unexpected places, such as small town Illinois.
Yep.
It could have happened pretty much anywhere, but
it could have. I agree.
In Illinois.
Yep. That's it. That's all you're saying. Okay.
Well,
we did a whole
episode. My other one, which was Krista Phillips, Sandwich with a Side of Romance, and the novellas that go with it, is also set in a small town relatively near to Chicago. And I remember hanging out with Krista at a ACFW conference, speaking of those, about the time that she was writing this one, and she was like, with a town name like Sandwich, and she named her hero Reuben, and she writes rom-com. So there you go. So I think what we're getting here is that rom-coms can be set in Illinois.
Apparently.
Yes.
3 out of 4 here are rom-coms.
Very good. All right. Well, my next book is in Minnesota, and it is Better Than First by Kari Trumbo. And it is, her name is, I'm going to assume it is Isla, Isla. I'm sure that there are other ways you could pronounce it, but I'm going with Isla. She is determined to win gold and qualify for the Paralympics. She is paralyzed from the waist down and in a wheelchair. So she's doing wheelchair races.
Look, and here, by the way.
What? Yeah, I know.
Go Cooney. This is very special.
Like, okay, and then we drew
you told her to go.
Exit stage right. Yes.
Yeah. Left.
So her best friend, who is also her coach, is trying to help her see that there's more to life than racing and then this goal. because the more she sort of fixates on the goal, the worse she races. And so she's getting more and more anxious and upset about this. And so they're both secretly in love with one another, and which is kind of fun. I like Friends to more where there isn't one who's like, no, we never, they both really are for each other 100%. And not as worried about losing the friendship. Like that doesn't hold up the romance, which I also love, because sometimes I know I've dragged it on too long in some of my books. It can drag on sometimes a little bit more than you want it to. So he convinces her to make a little mini bucket list and take some time off training to achieve these little bucket list items. And he's just trying to help her see that there's more to life than the Paralympics. It's got definite faith, and it was just really cute and fun. And I thought that a heroine in a wheelchair was super fun as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
I haven't read that one. Narelle, you need to go first, so just in case I have to give both of mine again.
Well, as I said, Dear Henry, Love Edith was my second one. And I think why that hit my list is that the humor is just delightful. And Henry and Edith, they live in the same house, but don't actually know they're living in the same house. But the entire town knows that they know each other because they're living in the same house, and the misunderstandings and that grocery store scene. I think that to me is the standout funniest scene in the book. That's not a spoiler to talk about. Yeah. So definitely go for Dear Henry, Love Edith. But I'm going to very quickly jump to a book that I have talked about before, but I haven't written down the episodes because it was one of my spares, which is also in Chicago, and that's Kept by Sally Bradley. If you're looking for gritty, edgy Christian fiction that isn't as squeaky clean as what a lot of people would expect in Squeaky Clean, then you'd probably really enjoy this one. This one did very well in Australia because Australians tend to like stories that are a little bit rougher around the edges. And Miska's editor, she's living in a luxury condo in Chicago, and it's near a park, and I can't think of the name of it. It's a very famous park in the city, and that is features in the story. So it was very much set in Chicago, couldn't be anywhere else. And I think Sally has either lived in Illinois or Chicago. She was very familiar with the setting. A lot of the setting came into the story. And she's actually a kept woman, Miska, even though she has a gig as an editor. Romance editors don't get paid a lot. So you learn about that in this book. And her basically, there's this married baseball player who basically pays for her to live in this condo, and of course there's payment rendered for services provided and all that kind of thing as well. So it's a bit on the edgy side. But then her neighbor Dylan, he's an assistant pastor at a local church, and he's just delightful. To me, Dylan was the star of this book, and the way he related to Miska, and just watching her unpack where her life is versus where her life could be from a biblical perspective was very interesting. It had a very strong faith element in it. This book is not for everybody. If you're a conservative reader, please ignore everything I've just said because this is not the book for you. But if you're looking for something that goes a little bit further into some of those more gritty, darker, edgier places, then Kept's a very good book by Sally Bradley in Chicago.
I'm a fairly conservative reader. I really enjoyed Kept.
Yeah, it was very good.
She did a great job. And it couldn't be set somewhere else easily. Well, it could, but it would have to be somewhere with multiple professional sports teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an important part of it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Valerie, what you got?
You don't have something in Minnesota, hey, Narelle?
I do, but I went to my number 4, but you can do my number 3. I bet we have the same book. And then I can tag in after.
Minnesota, and I was hoping you were going to take one of them.
Well, I have one that relates to episode 100.
So I should go with the one that doesn't. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention Still the One by Rachel Russel and Susan May Warren. So Susan May Warren has an entire series set in Minnesota, which is, I believe, where she lives. It's called Deep Haven, and she has invited at least one other author to write in this world. So Rachel Russel this is her debut. I think there's a 6-book series behind it, but I only have read the first one yet. Cole Barrett is a former Army Ranger. He was raised by his grandfather in Deep Haven, and this is not a source of good memories for him at all. Now the old man is in a care home, and Cole is back to sell the house and enlist with the U.S. Marshals. But of course, it never goes quite that quickly because it's a romance, right? There's a tenant in the garage apartment who refuses to move out early. She's going to stick in that spot until she's forced out by however long the process takes. And it turns out it's his childhood crush, wedding planner Megan, and her son Josh. And the story involves a lot of forgiveness and learning to trust again. I enjoyed it quite a lot. And I guess for any fans of Susan May Warren, you would say it couldn't be set anywhere else. Well, it definitely couldn't be set somewhere that didn't have winter. But it could be set other wintry places, unless you're addicted to Deep Haven, in which case, it couldn't be. But that was one book that I read relatively recently in the last few months, thinking about Minnesota.
Yeah, and that's the one that I didn't get time to read, but that's okay because I will read it. I can talk about it in recent reads down the track, so it's all good. And then we can remember Deep Haven again.
Yep. I'm out. So if you have another one, Narelle, go ahead.
I do. I'm actually shocked that I'm not the first one out. Normally I am the first one out all the time. So I have one that
first one out.
which I'm surprised you didn't have this one, which is The Bookshop of Secrets by Mollie Rushmeyer.
That was my second one for Minnesota.
Yes.
That's
and that one
you said episode there. I knew you'd have that one.
Yes, episode 100. And this one I chose, and it was probably one that came to mind very early as well, because Lake Superior is a really important part of the story.
Yes,
and Lake Superior is different to other lakes, and there's a historical sort of piratey sort of backstory that ties into it. But this is just a wonderful book. Hope Sparrow's basically her mother's passed away. She has a very traumatic background. She hasn't had an easy childhood by any stretch of the imagination, and she's in Winnishin Falls is where it's set, and she's looking for old books that her mother had collected that her mother had wanted to leave to her, but have gone missing. So that's what she's on the search for, is missing books. And she ends up in this staying in this bookshop, and the grandson of the owners of the bookstore is Ronan, and he has his own secrets, and he's the hero of the story. And I'm going to pass it over to Valerie to talk more about it.
No, not really. Read it. It's good. And episode, what number was it, Narelle?
It's 100. How can you forget 100?
It really is set on the Great Lakes. It couldn't be set a place much different than that at all. And there is a treasure hunt, and you will probably love it. So go read it.
Yeah.
It was so good. I really enjoyed it. Loved it.
Loved
the history.
Wisconsin? You guys don't have Wisconsin?
No.
I will say, here's the thing. I read 2 books set in Wisconsin, and I have elected not to speak about them.
That's a fair call.
Then. So I'll speak about my 2, which are also ones we've mentioned before. And Narelle, you've got like 30 seconds to find the episode numbers if you like.
Sorry, my brain's dead.
Emily Conrad's Rhythms of Redemption series, starting with To Bring You Back, is set along Lake Michigan in Wisconsin.
See, and I didn't even realize that was in Wisconsin. So, yeah.
I did, because I really recognized it. My sister lived in Wisconsin for many years, and I have visited there, so that it resonated with me that way. Okay. And it is also set like on the lake, on the Great Lake, so it couldn't be set a lot of other places, although the lake maybe isn't the super most important part of it.
Still matters.
But Gannon is the famous lead singer of the band Ostrich. He returns to his home area in Wisconsin, buys a huge home on the lake as a retreat center, and sets about trying to woo his teenage sweetheart back again, Adeline. And then there's a whole series behind that. These are a little bit harder hitting books in some ways. They're not super easy reads, but they're so worth it. They're really good books. And I'm going to keep talking. Valerie Bodden also has an entire series set in Wisconsin called Hope Spring. And you'll probably want to start with Not Until Forever. It's set on a cherry orchard in Wisconsin, and
Is that Wisconsin?
See, I
had
didn't
no
think that was
idea.
Wisconsin either.
I knew Emily's. I knew you talk about Emily's books,
Yeah.
but I'm now gobsmacked that that's Wisconsin. I had no idea, and I have read books in that series.
I've read
There
the
you
whole
go.
series and I had no idea that it was in Wisconsin.
well, there you go. So apparently the setting isn't super duper important, except for the cherry orchard part.
Okay.
I
honestly thought it was in the South.
No,
No,
it's not in the South.
shows what I know.
But yeah, Not Until Forever is the first book in that series. I liked it. I liked some of the later books in the series more, but obviously I liked it enough to keep reading.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There you go. That's funny.
That's a
I
wrap.
had no idea
It
those were
is.
Wisconsin.
And if I read books and don't write book recommendations because I run out of time, which happens quite regularly, then it's like a state on the other side of the world. It's
I
like
completely get it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
me too. I'm like, it might be up there somewhere, but I don't know.
I kept thinking Tennessee, North Carolina, like
I
somewhere in that
thought it was
area
Tennessee too.
The newer series is set
around there. Yeah,
I didn't think about it like looking that up. I just know it's not Wisconsin. But
I think it's
seems like
Tennessee.
yeah.
There you go.
Anyway,
There you go. All right. Do you have any more, Narelle? Or did we get them all?
I am done with what I wrote down.
You do.
You
win.
always
Do you have more?
win these. Honorable mentions from Valerie Comer are coming up.
Right.
I want
You
my
don't
prize.
have 6 more, Valerie, to talk about?
Well, I could have,
No. Well, let's
but
go.
no, I only wrote 2 down for each of the 3 states because I thought, well, if Beth mentions this one, then I've still got the other one, or if Narelle mentions this one, then I can go to this one. But you guys just didn't play it my way.
Sorry.
Tragic.
Sorry.
Really tragic.
I really struggled with these 3 states. I was proud that I got like 3. I did, like I said, I did read some books that were in Wisconsin. But we don't do books.
Yeah. No, we don't.
We don't
And
have
Emily,
thumbs down
yeah.
episodes.
Yeah.
Emily Conrad would have been my 5th, but I was pretty certain that Valerie was going to talk about Emily's books.
Yeah. Again, I didn't even realize it was
Nice comeback.
Wisconsin.
Nice comeback.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're a little short today, but not too bad. Not too bad. So let us know all the Wisconsin books that you have.
And Minnesota and Illinois.
Yeah, or Illinois or Minnesota, either one. Or if you think my regional accents are terrible, you can tell me that too. We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Story Chats. Let us know your thoughts. And while you're there on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And we will look forward to seeing you again next week. In the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.